after painting figures for a long time, I realized that I came to an impasse, and I wondered, can I make an interesting painting without the body, without the face, without the eyes, without that to sort of organize the space. And I started painting abstractly, and I didn't feel like I really knew what I was doing, and that was kind of part of the excitement. I wasn't really interested in telling stories anymore. I was interested in making an object. I was interested in kind of tapping into my intuition and into having no idea what was going to happen. So it was sort of exciting and a little scary. And so I did that and got better at that over the course of over 10 years, probably. And then it started to feel like not enough, and the body sort of like um, kind of nudged back in. And at first I was like, oh no, like I have to reckon with the body again. And that was challenging because I knew I didn't want to paint the body from observation, from a photograph. I didn't want to worry about proportions or if it was correct and if it was a likeness of another person. These were not portraits. And so these torsos started just like literally felt like were dropping in from outer space into my pieces, and I just went with it. They were all torsos, and I wasn't interested in the things that make one person distinct from another person, like hairstyle, facial expressions, this kind of thing, height in relation to other objects. So they were figures, but they really were just about the body. Once I realized I didn't have to like paint a whole body because nobody was in charge except me, I could paint body parts. And so I got very interested in hands and feet and body parts coming in at different angles. And a lot of the work is really about situating oneself in space in relation to gravity, in relation to weightlessness, into being like, are we tethered to our surroundings? Are we free from our surroundings? So those are sort of the metaphorical ideas that I think about when I'm working. This combination of, groundedness and flight and interaction with our surroundings. This whole show, pretty much with one exception, is squares. So squares, I think when I'm having this sort of, to me, interesting and not sure where I'm going thing happening inside, I think the square sort of grounds it and gives me a little bit of a safety net. Like, you're okay, you can do anything you want in here because we have the edge. But I didn't really want the edge to be so rectilinear, which is why there's a whole part of this show that I just created these sort of wobbly squares inside a square. And then that made it feel like what I was portraying was sort of breathing a little bit along the edges, as opposed to being like, that's where we are. And then that sort of felt like not so important anymore, and I started painting to the edges. So nothing is written in stone. It's just oil paint on on board. One other thing I would say about the work that I'm interested in is the concept of play and the concept of playfulness and having a little bit of humor in the work. Um, so obviously I take it as it's my métier, the thing I care about the most aside from my kids, my husband. But I do feel like I strive to have a little bit of lightheartedness in the work, and that is important to me. And the feeling of that the panels are just like they're just breathing a little bit. They're not quite so authoritative. I feel like I'm interested in how someone might look at them and almost feel in their body that like, oh, that's interesting. That's not quite correct. Maybe in terms of its anatomy, which I studied anatomy, did artistic anatomy. I mean, all that stuff. And so for me, there's, the process of really winnowing down, like, what about this is interesting to me? What is really interesting? And that's a hard question because I think a lot of times it can just be automatic, like, oh, this is what I do. I could draw you now and it would look like you, and wouldn't that be cool? And that's great, but I'm looking for something else, and looking for something that you don't quite know or for me, looking for something that I don't quite know where it lies, it's not, there's not often a great sense of accomplishment because it's really only after I finish it, like this painting, for example, I almost threw up making that painting because I made the painting and then the body came in and I was so uncomfortable. But to me, that's a sign that something interesting is happening. Um, I didn't throw up and I didn't throw it out. No throwing. so you know, when I know when I'm just doing something in a little with a little bit of lightheartedness and a little bit of openness, I feel like it translates in the work and it makes the work more accessible. But I don't have an intention for my work. I don't think this is what I'm doing and this is how I want to be like seen. I don't really have that overview. I'm really just taking it, you know, one day at a time. I mean, I think when I was younger, I was so excited to get a gallery in New York, which I did and sold work and was known for these figurative paintings I was making. And then when I couldn't make them anymore, I lost my gallery in a very nice way, but they were just like, okay, this isn't for us anymore. And that was, I mean, I would just come in here and lie on the floor and cry. Like I was like, like I can't do that anymore. What can I do? And I also decided to have two kids. So that is like, that messes with you. I mean, that's like a whole other part of my life that when I would come in here and really preserve my studio time, but it was very separate from, you know, being a mom. And I feel now that the kids are grown and up and fantastic. Although I worry about them all the time, but they're doing good. um, you know, now I sort of feel like all bets are off, and I can put all my energy back here. You know, leaving New York City and moving to Maine was, you know, also a choice of like, okay, better place to have kids, easier place to have kids, but you know, maybe is it going to be good for my career or not? And I sort of felt like, whatever, I want to have kids, I want to live in a beautiful place. I'm going to come up here and try to make this happen. Um, but I think at this age, there is just a feeling of, you know, I was just at McDowell this past fall, and to a person, everyone was like, "Wow, you're working so hard. You're like working every day. Like, how are you being so productive?" And I was like, "Well, I'm 64. Like, now is the time. Like, I'm not, I'm not gonna come here to play pool with you, even though you're very nice. Like, I might do that a little bit, but like mostly I'm here to work. So I feel like I have that energy now to like just really do this."